The Batcave, Batman's iconic base of operations, ever-changing in design and function, housing a countless number of bat-themed vehicles, computery science stuff, and of course, trophies from past victories, like a giant animatronic dinosaur and a very large penny. But where did these items come from? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Comic Misconceptions, a show that takes you into detail about the things you think you know about comics. I'm your host, Scott Niswander, and the TV show of Gotham premiered this week, so we thought we would do a week of videos and podcasts that show our love for Batman, because we do that, we love him. One of the things that's piqued my interest about the character over the past couple of years has been the Batcave, specifically what's up with the dinosaur and the giant penny. And believe me, we will get into those, but first, a quick history of the origin of the Batcave. The Batcave made its debut not in a comic book, but in the 1943 Batman serial, but it actually wasn't called the Batcave. In fact, back then it was called...
You're going with us to the Bat's Cave.
Yep, back then it was actually called the Bat's Cave, and it was a pretty stripped down version of what we know the Batcave to be in the comics. Just a desk, a few chairs, and some of Batman's bats.
Just some of my bats.
The Batman serial also introduced the concept of the secret entrance to the Batcave through a grandfather clock, a gimmick that's been used frequently through the comics. Although in many renditions, the clock has to be set to the time when Bruce's parents were killed at 1048 to gain entrance. The Batcave made its comic debut a couple months later in October of 1943 in a daily newspaper Batman and Robin comic strip where the name was changed to Batcave. 2 words. A couple more months later, and the Batcave made its official debut in Detective Comics number 83, and if that issue sounds familiar, it's because we talked about it right here in this episode, where Alfred went from looking like this to like this. Why? Because that's how he looked in the Batman serials. So basically, Detective Comics number 83 was the issue where they started to implement things from the successful TV serials, which is still a trend that I think we see today. You may recall a scene in Batman Begins where a young Bruce Wayne falls through some old wooden planks in his garden into a cave full of bats. Years later, he returns to his childhood home and uses that cave as a headquarters of sorts for fighting crime. This is actually not too far off from the comic books. We see a very similar scene happen in Secret Origins of the World's Greatest Superheroes, so good job, movies. But if we wanted to talk about pre-Crisis Batman, then that's a whole different story. In Detective Comics number 205, the origin of the Batcave is revealed for the first time. Wayne Manor wasn't a family estate that was passed down from generation to generation, but just a house that Bruce bought when he came back to Gotham. He planned on using an old barn on the property as his base of operations, and while testing the floors, he fell through and discovered what would soon become the Batcave. As for the iconic Batcave trophies like the penny and the dinosaur, at one point these could all be found in a separate area of the Batcave known as the Hall of Trophies, or the Trophy Room, that made its debut in Batman number 12 of 1942. Nowadays, the trophies just seem to be scattered throughout the Batcave as just random decoration. But hold on, Scott, you say. If the Hall of Trophies made its debut in 1942, doesn't that predate the Batman serials, making the first appearance of the Batcave to actually be in comic books? I'm personally not very convinced. The main reason being that the Hall of Trophies in that issue is shown to have a giant window, which makes me feel like it's not underground like a cave. It could just be aesthetic, because why would you have a room full of objects that link you to Batman with a big old window for outsiders to look into? But it was never explicitly stated as the Batcave, or the Bat's Cave for that matter, so I guess that one's left up to your interpretation. It wasn't until Batman number 48 that we see for the first time the Batcave and Trophy Room combined into one area. And again, here we see the penny and the dinosaur are almost like permanent fixtures of the Batcave there from basically the very beginning. So where did these objects come from? The dinosaur first appeared in Batman number 35. In this story, Batman and Robin are invited to the opening of a dinosaur-themed island amusement park. But probably not the one that you are thinking of, because these dinosaurs are animatronic. They are challenged by the creator of Dinosaur Island, Murray Wilson Hart, to a friendly game where Batman and Robin must survive 36 hours on this island without the use of their gadgets, while robotic dinosaurs and cavemen are trying to kill them. But the remote was stolen by a bad guy named Stephen Chase, who wants to really kill Batman on behalf of the criminal underworld. They MacGyver their way to victory, and Batman takes the animatronic T-Rex that Chase rode as a trophy for that battle. Depending on the comic book, the dinosaur trophy could be something other than a T-Rex, but it remains for the most part fairly consistent. This story was updated in 1997 with Batman Chronicles number 8. This time around, Hart was an old family friend of the Waynes who wanted to make Dinosaur Island into an educational park for kids to learn while being entertained. his partner, Chase, wanted to just turn it into a horror attraction. There's a ton of great parallels from this story to the original, and I encourage you both to read them. Everything I talk about always in the link in the description below if you want to go check it out. The story ends with Bruce feeling down that half the criminals he put away in his early career of Batman so far are already out of prison. Alfred suggests that he invest in a reminder of all the good he's done in his victories instead of dwelling on the failures. Thus, the T-Rex found its home in the Batcave. The giant penny also has a fascinating history. It originally comes from the world's finest number 30 with a guy named Joe Coyne, who gets arrested for attempting to rob a store of all its pennies. When he gets out of prison, he becomes the Penny Plunderer and vows to always commit penny-related crimes to get back at the coppers who put him away. Get it? Coppers, pennies. You know. One of his crimes involves stealing a priceless penny from a coin and stamp exhibit, the same exhibit featuring the famous giant penny. Batman uses it to beat up some thugs, but also this story features not one, but 2 times when Batman is knocked unconscious by nothing but an ordinary roll of pennies. During his third encounter with the dynamic duo, the Penny Plunderer sets up a plan with his crew to send a signal through a payphone so that they can all counter Batman and Robin on his command. The only problem is that he only has pennies in his possession, and he needed a nickel to use the payphone. Betrayed by pennies. This story was also updated in Batman Chronicles number 19 when the Penny Plunderer used the giant penny as a Trojan horse to get into the exhibit, and this time it was Robin who was knocked out by a roll of pennies. Batman throws coins at Coin, which sets off this Rube Goldberg type sequence of things hitting each other until the giant penny loses balance and just straight up kills the Penny Plunderer. Thus is the end of probably Batman's greatest villain, the Penny Plunderer, but it's not the end of the giant penny. I guess Batman wanted to remember that horrible murder that he kind of committed, so he brought the penny to the Batcave where he presumably had Alfred wash all the, let's just say, justice off of it. And to those of you who are fans of Batman the Animated Series, you might recognize a different origin of the giant penny involving Two-Face strapping bats to it and sending it flying through the air. If it lands on heads, Batman dies. If it lands on tails, he'll live but suffer many broken bones. After Batman uses Two-Face's coin to free himself and take care of business like a boss, we see the fate of the penny.
So, Harvey, what became of the giant penny?
They actually let him keep it.
So that's just been a brief history of the Batcave and a couple trophies inside of it. But let me know what you guys think is your favorite rendition of the Batcave from the comic books and the movies and the TV shows and more. And if you had your own secret underground lair, what kind of cool stuff would you put inside of it? Let me know in the comments. And just a quick reminder, we did start a Patreon page where we're gonna be going a little bit more in depth about this topic and touching on things that I did not have time for in this episode. So like the Joker playing card that you see in a lot of comic books and TV shows, that we're gonna talk about over there. There's a link in the description if you wanna know more about that. And if this is your first time hanging out with us here at NerdSync, we do weekly comic book videos just like this one every Wednesday, and we don't want you to miss out on any of it. So please subscribe. Once again, I'm Scott. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll see you right here next week for more things that you thought you knew about comics. See ya. You heard me right. At this point in time, DC was distributing Marvel Comics. For fear that DC would shut down the Fantastic Four comic book, seeing it as a rival to their own superhero comics, Marvel could have chosen to disguise their covers as regular old monster books. Pretty sneaky, sis.